Small fabric baskets like this one can be used for so many things, but I made this one specially for Easter. It has a fabric handle to hold the basket, and this is quite a small basket with a finishing size of 7 inches in width, 5 inches in height and 4 inches in depth. Strap is 13 inches long and 2 inches in width. As you can see, our basket comes in 2 fabric tones and you can match fabrics as you like. Now let's get right into it. I'm starting with lining fabrics. I'm using 12 by 8 inch fabric and we need 2 from that. We're gonna need 2 pieces of the same size for the outside as well. Now to make a 12 by 8 inch piece, first I have cut one 12 by 5.5 piece from one type of fabric design and one 12 by 3.5 inch piece from another fabric design. We are going to sew them together to get one outside fabric piece. As we need 2 outside pieces for the project, you will need to get another one ready in the same manner. All these fabrics are pre-washed and ironed cotton fabric. To get a bit of steadiness to the basket, I am using 2 pieces of fusible fleece and it is the same size as 12 by 8 inches. But I have cut mine a little smaller, about half an inch smaller to reduce the thickness around the seams. Now for the strap, I'm also using this two-tone fabric design for that as well. I have cut 2 pieces of 14 by 2.5 inches and it's one from each fabric design. Again for the steadiness, I'm using a piece of fusible fleece a little smaller than 14 by 2.5 inches to fuse with one of the fabric layers. First, I'm gonna prep my 2 outer fabric pieces. For the basket, I'm planning on placing the polka dot one for the upper part and the unicorn floral design for the lower part. Take one from each design and place them right sides facing each other. Make sure both are aligned along the line and then use pins or craft clips to hold the pieces together. If your fabric has a certain prints, make sure those are properly placed. For example, mine has unicorns in one of the designs, so it has to be standing up, not the other way around. After pinning and placing all the pieces, we are going to sew along the lines leaving half an inch seam allowance, one line at a time. Start to sew straight and remember to do a little back stitch at the beginning. Remove the pins as you go and remember to leave half an inch seam allowance while sewing. Otherwise, outside fabric pieces are not going to be same size as the lining fabric. Do a little back stitch at the end and trim the thread. At this point, we have one of the 2 outer pieces ready and do the same with the other one. Sew straight leaving half an inch seam allowance and remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the ending. Trim all the threads. You can now turn the upper fabric pieces and because we left a half an inch seam allowance, the final size of each piece is gonna be 12 by 8 inches, which is the same as the size of the lining fabric. Before going any further, let's give a little press to 2 outer pieces to keep them nice and flat. When ironing the wrong side, I would like to open the seams and press them apart. Try to spread out the seams whenever you can, otherwise it will get thicker while sewing. I'm self-taught sewing, so I learn things as I go. I didn't do this in my early videos, but I recommend you do this to avoid bulky parts. The next step is to fuse the fleece to the fabric. Place the shiny side of the fuse facing the wrong side of the fabric. As you can see, I have cut the fuse a little bit smaller than the fabric size. Now start to press from the fabric side by leaving the iron for a few seconds in one place and then move one place on another place like the way I do. These are the instructions on the label, and according to the type of fuse you use, instructions might vary. I'm fusing fleece only for the two outside fabric layers, but you can use it for lining fabric as well to make it more steady. At this point, both layers are fused properly, and let's move to the next step. Place the two outer layers facing right sides together and make sure they are aligned as well. Now pin the two layers in all three sides, only leaving the top side open. Also, make sure your fabric pins have arranged properly before pinning the fabrics together. We are going to sew along the three sides later. Now let's move to the lining fabric and place them facing the right sides together as we did with the outer fabric. Again, pin the three sides except the top side. This is similar to making a tote bag. The top side is for the basket opening. We are going to sew along the three sides in both outer and inner fabric bags. I'm starting with the outer fabric bag. Sew straight by leaving a half an inch seam allowance, and you can start at any of the two corners of the top opening side. As always, remember to do a little back stitch at the beginning and at the ending. Then sew continuously along the three pinned sides. I always forget I need to buy some craft clips soon. I bought these pins a while back, but these can be really painful when you prick your finger. When you reach the corners, raise the foot while the needle is down and pivot. Then lower the foot and start to sew again. Do a little back stitch at the end. Trim all the threads. Now let's move to the lining bag. It's all the same as the outside bag. Back stitch at the beginning and at the ending. Sew along the three pinned sides by leaving a half an inch seam allowance. Trim all the threads at the end. As the both inner and outer bags are ready, now it's time to turn these into baskets. For that, we need to add a considerable depth to the bag. At the two bottom corners, mark two squares measuring 2 by 2 inches in size. I'm using this sewing ruler to make things easier, but you can easily use a simple ruler to do the job as well. Mark 2 inches away from the corner, and then from that point, draw two straight perpendicular lines to form a square shape. Do the same with the lining bag. Mark 2 inches away from the corner and draw the lines to form a square shape. If you want to increase the depth of the basket, you can simply increase the size of the square. I think for this basket measurements, 2 to 3 inches depth would be fine. Now using a pair of scissors, cut out those square shapes. Be very careful not to cut any further than the drawn lines. You are going to damage the fabric basket otherwise. Do the same for both inner and outer bags. You can keep these perfectly square-shaped fabric scraps for a future project. I rarely throw any fabric scraps. I have seen some people cut these out first and then sew the remaining sides later to form a bag. But for me, this way is much easier and you can choose your own way by just trying it out. Now starting from the outer fabric bag, spread out one of those opening cuts in a way that the seams from two sides align with each other. As I mentioned earlier, I'm also going to spread the seams apart to reduce the bulky parts. You can then use a pin or a craft clip to hold things in place. We are going to sew along this line later. Now do the same for the other opening cut. Spread it apart evenly to align the seams from the both sides. You can just press it using your hands. Use a few pins to hold everything in place and we are going to sew along the line later. Now move along and do the same for the opening cuts of the lining bag as well. As I told you in some of my videos, my sewing machine is a basic one and I usually try to avoid thicker seams by simply spreading them apart. It will be easier to sew all 4 opening cuts in one go. Remove the pin and hold things in place using your hand. Now start to sew the openings one by one. I'm going to sew the outer fabric bag first. I'm going to sew straight, leaving a half an inch seam allowance. You don't need your stitches to be loosened. Because of that, always remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the ending. Because the fabric has become a little steady with the fuse, try sewing little slowly if that is more comfortable for you. Finally, trim the thread. As you can see, one of the openings is secured and let's move to the other side. With this opening secured, the outer fabric basket is ready. As you can see, it has a quite a depth to it and I really like the way it turned out. And now let's move to the inner fabric basket. Steps are the same and since it doesn't have any fuse, this will be much easier to sew. Again, sew the both openings straight with the half an inch seam allowance. Finally, trim all the threads. With that done, we have both inner and outer fabric baskets ready to go. Now one thing is missing, and it's the strap for the basket. Now get your pieces for the strap and start to fuse any one of the fabric pieces to the previously cut fusible fleece. As we did earlier, place the shiny side of the fleece facing the wrong side of the fabric and then iron it from the fabric side. Fusible fleece is properly fused to the fabric at this point, and you can place this fabric piece on top of the remaining fabric piece facing right sides together. Now pin those together along the two wider sides. Next, we are going to sew straight along these two sides. Remove the pin and start to sew one side at a time, leaving a 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you don't want to go into this much trouble, you can simply buy some webbings to use as straps. I do that when making tote bags. Trim all the threads at the end. Let's move to complete the other side of the strap now. It's the same 1/4 inch seam allowance and do a little back stitch at the beginning and at the ending as well. Trim all the threads. As both sides of the strap are secured, you can now turn the right side out. This is not that much of a narrow space, so you don't need any special tools to turn right side out. Be a little patient and slowly turn the right side out by pulling the inside fabric towards you. The strap is ready at this point, and give it a good press to keep things nice and flat, especially at the edges. Now to give your strap a more professional look, I'm going to top stitch along the two wider sides of the strap. Top stitch one side at a time, so closer to the edge. This is not a must, but these little things add more durability to our fabric basket. Now move to the other side. After all, the strap is for holding the basket. This will also add extra strength to the strap. Trim all the threads and the strap is ready to go in the basket. At this point, the outer fabric basket is still on the wrong side out. I'm planning to attach the strap across the two wider sides. Now to find the middle of the two sides, keep the seams facing each other like this, and then it naturally folds the two sides, showing where the midpoint is. Now mark those 2 points at the two sides using a fabric marker. Think ahead which fabric design you want to be on the outside of the strap. I'm thinking unicorn floral design, and that side has to be the one facing the bottom of the basket. Fold the strap in half and place one of the ends at the marked point. Now keep in mind, this strap has a width of 2 inches, so you have to align the midpoint of the strap and that previously marked point. Use a pin to hold the strap in place. This doesn't have to be precise. Just eyeball the midsection of the strap. Do the same with the both strap ends. Now we are going to sew straight at the strap areas to just attach the strap to the basket. Let's start with one of the ends. Remove the pin and hold the strap while sewing. Leave a less than quarter-inch seam allowance. After you sew one of the ends, move to the other end of the strap. It's the same quarter-inch seam allowance. Finally, trim all the threads. It's the time to assemble the fabric basket. We have an outer basket with the strap attached. Now turn the lining basket right side out. Poke all the corners out. Now place the lining basket inside the outer basket. As you can see, right sides of the fabrics are facing each other. Carefully align the outer and inner baskets along the open end. Even in here, I try to spread apart the seams to avoid the bulky areas. Use a few pins or craft clips to hold everything in place. If you have already tried making our fabric tote bag, this project won't be much different to you. I'll leave the link for that tutorial in the description. Mark about a 3 to 4 inch area so we can use that space to turn the right side out. When you select that area, skip the parts where the strap is. I don't want to make things complicated. Starting from one of the marked ends, we are going to sew all the way around, leaving that marked area. Now this is not necessary, but I found out my sewing machine has a secret box that I can remove. It makes things easier to rotate while sewing, so I wanted to use it at least once. Now coming back to the project, start to sew at one of the marked points, leaving half an inch seam allowance. And remember to backstitch at the beginning and at the ending. Remove the pins as you go and slow down when you reach the areas with more fabric layers. Stop the sewing when you reach the other marked point and do a little backstitch. Trim all the threads at the end. It's time to turn inside out using the space we have left. This step will take some time, but if you have left 3 to 4 inches area, it is not that difficult. Also, don't give too much pressure, otherwise it might damage the fabric at the two corners of the opening. At this point, you know you did a good job by just seeing the right side of the basket. We only have few more steps to go. Poke everything out and first press it with your hands and then use an iron to give a good press, especially around the basket opening. Things will be easier if you have one of those small tabletop iron boards and a mini iron. But if you are using a regular iron like myself, that works fine too. It does the job. I think it's all look good. Now the final step is to sew all the way around the edge, enclosing the small opening we left. I'm going to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance to go around the basket. Do a little back stitch at the beginning and sew straight while rotating the basket along the way. Make sure you properly secure that opening as well. This project only needs smaller fabric pieces because we have mixed 2 different fabric designs. Try mixing and matching the fabrics you already have and let me know how it turned out. We are almost at the end and do a little back stitch to end the sewing. Finally, trim all the threads. Everything is completed and our fabric Easter basket is ready to use. Now, if you are looking for more Easter-related crafts, we already have one for making a felt bunny and another one for making an Easter egg. Make sure you check those out too. I'm planning on making more Easter crafts in upcoming weeks and let's see how it goes. Thank you for watching and I'll join you in the next one.